All right. Hi, everybody. Today on Her Purpose, we are joined with the phenomenal, the sensational, the amazing Takia Gaither Stuckey. So let's give her a round of applause. All right. Okay. So, Miss Takia, do you want to take a moment just to introduce yourself to everyone and tell us who you are?
Sure. Hello, everybody. So, first, thank you, Chanelle, for having me on the show today. I so greatly appreciate it. Like, this is fun. I don't know how to act with this kind of stuff. But I am Takia Gaither Stuckey. I am an author, editor, formatter, um, retired teacher, all the things. And I am here today as the April Black Women Authors Author of the Month.
Yes, that's right. That is right. So, I mean, we are again. I'm just so delighted. Thank you so much, Takia, for taking time out of your busy schedule to be able to stop by on Her Purpose on Trivia's Inspirational Radio to just have a moment to have some chat with us on this Tuesday. So let's jump right in because, like I said, I know you are incredibly busy. My first question is today is this: when did you know that writing is what you were called to do? When did you know that?
Um, it was official, I'll
Mhm.
say, in 2018.
Okay.
So what ended up happening is like growing up, I would write as a hobby. I
Mhm.
would make up stories. I would write like fashion magazines and make up the little articles that went in them because I just thought it was fun to
Mm.
do. And then in 2018, I went to some entrepreneur conference, summit, or whatever.
Okay.
And people have been telling me I should start a blog for teachers because I always had these like most random stories
Okay.
about stuff that happened in my day. So I went to this little conference and I was like, oh, I'm going to start a blog. And so I started the blog and it started off about teaching. And then one day I sat down to write, and it was not long after I just got married. And I said, okay, God, what am I going to write about today? And so I started typing, thinking I was going to write something about teaching.
Mhm.
And at the moment that I finished, the whole thing was about being a newlywed and how hard it was
Mm.
to actually like be married and juggle all the stuff. And the fact that I had to like choose to be married. I had to make the decision every day to do that. And so from that point forward, my blog, even though it was called Takia the Teacher, it every once in a while I would actually write about teaching, but it became me writing about like any and everything else in life. And then right after I started the blog, I was selected to be a part of an online magazine called Godly Today. And I wrote for them for about 6 months until they reshifted and did some other stuff. But
Okay.
yeah.
That is amazing. So you just kind of from there, you just kind of knew that, hey, I have something here. Not just
Mm-hmm.
about teaching, but about everyday life, about relating to
Everything.
things that everybody can relate to. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay. So what is it about the writing process that you love the most? And at the same time, what is it about the writing process that frustrates you the most?
Um, let's see. I'll do frustrating first.
Okay.
Frustrating is when I don't have a direct idea.
Okay.
And I'm kind of like spinning trying to figure out how to write something. But
Okay.
at the same time, that is also the part that I like. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because what ends up happening is I called my company the Ready Write Her. After Psalms 45:1 is my tongue is skilled like the pen of a ready writer. But what ended up
Mm-hmm.
happening is I realized I can't write without God telling me the words. And
Mm.
so every time I sit down to write, I have to not have to start the same way, but it just ends up being the same sort of sequence of events. I'll say, okay, I'm supposed to write today. And then I'll just sit down and start writing and it all comes out. Versus me sitting down as Takia and I'm like, I need to write this chapter today. And I will sit there and spin and scribble and draw all kinds of circles, dots, stars, and come up with nothing. But the minute like God takes over, I can be done writing in an hour and then, be fine with what it is and like, okay, we're finished. And now I just, it's the editing and all of that stuff. But And I don't even mind editing. Most people hate editing. I think it's fun. I've always thought it was fun.
Girl, to a degree. I mean, because you can actually fall down like a writer's hole. You know what I mean? Do you ever catch yourself like just editing, go back and then edit again, then
Yeah.
edit and edit and edit and edit?
When I first started my blog, it would take me all day to make it go live. Like I could write it at 7:00 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And then because most of the time I'd be writing at work, so now I go teach somebody something and I'll come back to it at lunchtime and I go through and I'm edited and I think it's okay. And then right before the kids come back in, I find one last mistake. So then I put it down. I'd be like, all right, I'm gonna finish it up after school. And then after school, I go through it again and I'm like, but it's still not right. And then I put it down again and then I'd wait again until I get home. And then finally I would just push the button. Only to get it up and live and look at it again and be like, shoot. And so what I ended up having to do is I just like I won't give myself that much time to edit anymore. Like I had to put myself on a timer and be like, you got this hour and that's it. And unless something else tells you that it's pure trash, leave it alone and just send it off. And otherwise, because I'll just keep going. Like it'll never go anywhere. Ever. I have stuff on my laptop right now that I wrote who knows how long ago. Really? And it's just sitting. Just sitting.
That writer's hole is for real. I mean, because you can just keep on traveling that thing, going down and around and around and around. And before you look up, you're like, I don't even have a completed project at this point because I'm still just going around this little writer's hole. So that's good that you set some clear boundaries for yourself to know that, hey, okay, Takia, I'm going to get this done in XYZ time, and then you're able to actually stick to it. So that's phenomenal. That's a tip, you guys. If you're in your writing journey, you heard it here first on Her Purpose. Takia says, set a time limit and then stick to it so that you can get that project completed. That's phenomenal. So just speaking of that, so do you have a schedule for writing? Is that something that you just kind of do on the fly, or is it something that you set out purposely?
Really just comes on the fly. Like generally, I get most of it done when my boys are not home or like at night when they're sleeping, which is at night when is always the one that catches me because I made the mistake of, well, not mistake. It was a good mistake because I produced a lot after I did it, but it kept me up for hours way past what I intended. What ends up happening is I want to write and I'll start writing and then I'll just get on this vibe and I'll just keep going and going and going. Well, I was listening to Apostle John Eckhart pray for writers right before I started writing. And now, mind you, the recording started at like 10:30. And I said, okay, I'm going to be finished writing what I need to write by 11:30. I'm going to go ahead to bed. I looked up and it was 2:30 in the morning. But in the process of it, I knocked out like a series of emails that I needed to do. But it was still 2:30 in the morning. Like, so I said, okay, note to self, the next time I turn on Apostle Eckhart, it will clearly be way before 10:30. If these are the results that come after that, because I can't be staying up all night. I still got breakfast and stuff to do in the morning. Like people got to go to school. So, but it just has to be quiet. So when the house is quiet and I can think, then that's usually when I get the most done.
Okay. So can you tell us a little bit about your books and where our readers can find more about you? So tell us a little, because we know you're not the author of just one book, right? You have several books. So tell us a little bit about your books and where people can go to find you in these wonderful books that you have.
Yes. So I am actually a co-author on 10. I think it's 10 anthologies. Wow. So all of them are on Amazon. If you Google my name, I think my name is attached to all 10 except for maybe like there are 2 of them that somehow it escaped because of however they loaded stuff in the Amazon. But they're also on, the majority of them are on my website or the Amazon link to where to get them. The readywrite-her.com has them all on there. And then Be the Overcomer is the only book that I wrote myself. That one was just
No,
me.
that's, I mean, but that's the book you wrote. You co-wrote all of them except for this one. But I mean, I've read Be the Overcomer, and if you don't have this book, you need to go out and get it. It's going to enhance your Bible study, just how you see Scripture, just spending that time with when the Word of God, the applications, the prompts and things to be able to help you to really take Scripture and really kind of break it down to digestible pieces so that you can just really kind of chew on that for I don't know how long. I mean, it's going to make you enhance your Bible reading experience. You've got to go out and get this book, Be the Overcomer by Takia Gaither Stuckey. And you heard it here first. I had to say that. Okay, keep going.
Thank you. So they're all on my website. There's the 10 anthologies, and I think there's two more. Yeah, there's two more that will be coming out later this year. One in June, and I'm not
sure. Tell us about the one coming out in June.
The one in June is an anthology called "What Goes On in This House."
Girl,
Volume 2.
You better say that.
And so I met well, she's a friend now at a random online event. We were speakers for like the same online conference, and I popped up on the screen, and I'm delivering my speech or whatever. And she said, "You have to come to my summit. I need you to be a speaker at my summit." So I was a speaker for her event, and then when the book came back around, she called me because she wanted an editor, because somebody else, a mutual friend, said, "Well, she edits," and she was like, "Oh, you're right, she does." So she called me to edit the book. But in the process of it, she said, "I know you have more stories that go with that speech than the one that you told. So you have to write for the book." So I'm the editor and an author.
I love it.
In the anthology as well. So I thought that was pretty exciting. And the first book was really, really good with just the things that people talked about. And I'm reading through this one, and I'm reading as the editor, but I'm reading as like a fan, and I'm like, oh man.
Wow.
This is crazy. And then there's like one lady, her story seems very similar to mine, but they are completely unrelated. I'm like, this is like a parallel life. You just never know the kind of stuff that people are going through because nobody talks about them.
But you know what? The Bible says there is nothing new under the sun. You know what I'm saying? So you don't just realize how serious that is until you meet people and you're like, they say some of the stuff that I say. You know what I mean? It's just crazy like that, but it's literal. There is nothing new under the sun
at all. And then the other one is a devotional about the book of Proverbs. And so I'm doing, I think it's chapters 6, 7. It's either 5, 6, and 7 or 6, 7, and 8.
Okay.
So I'm doing the 3 different chapters back to back, but they're all the ones that deal with beware of, in my mind, it's always beware the hookers. Like that's just how I
so you dropping some serious tidbits on today. I'm glad we got all the latest news, because you gotta watch out for some people. Sometimes you don't really know who you need to be watching out from and who you need to keep in company. And so this book is gonna keep everybody straight on beware of certain.
And so like, because I'm raising boys, and I look at them and I'm like, no, this is like the book of Proverbs. People generally think it's probably like a book for women because everybody always only thinks of Proverbs 31. Right. But really, there's so much more information in there that men need, that it's almost worth putting out a Proverbs devotional book that's just for men. Like, hey, sir, there's a whole 4 chapters in this book dedicated on how not to go get girls of questionable character. And I don't have, I'm not saying nothing about nobody's daughter or nothing. I'm just saying things don't look right for a reason. So that's not where you want to go, versus this whole culture aspect. It's just like, go get as many as you can. No, that's not what we're gonna do over here. We're not gonna do that.
Not at all. We definitely have to have a standard, and Solomon definitely puts a lot of caution. Hey, beware of this. Don't follow her. Her footsteps lead here. Don't you go there. Don't you do this. And it's, he's like I said, the wisest man that's ever lived on the earth. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have to take that counsel. He's
And
giving
this,
serious bombs.
yeah, and then even reading it from like the flip side of it. So I'm looking at it and I'm like, had I read this entire book before I made some other choices,
Girl.
I would not have
Mm.
made those choices, because now I'm reading it and I'm like, yeah, I dealt with that. I dealt with that. I
Mm-hmm.
dealt with that.
Mm-hmm.
Barely escaped that one.
Girl, you better talk about
Saw that one coming and
it.
tiptoed away from it. But it's all the stuff that you just miss because you don't pay it any mind. You don't think is basically what it boils
Yeah.
down to. It's not that you think of anything, you just don't think at all. And
Mm.
all of that stuff becomes so much more important after the fact. And because we spent a lot of time in church learning like all the lingo and all
Right.
the popular Bible verses, but nobody told you how to use them.
Girl.
Um, you just start throwing scriptures at stuff that don't always make sense
Mm-mm.
to things that you throwing them at. And it's great to say God knows your heart, but did y'all skip the part that your heart is foul
It's deceitful
and
and
deceitful
desperately wicked.
and confusing
Girl, and who
and
can know
everything
it?
else? Right. Like, did y'all miss all that part? So you have about God knows your
Yeah.
heart for you to go do this wrong thing that you want to do. But what's really in your heart? Like, what's in your heart is going to come through your
Right.
actions. Did y'all miss that part
Exactly.
too? So all
Gonna
that
come
stuff
out
has
your
to add
mouth.
up.
Gonna come out that mouth too. But sooner or later, no matter how
Yep.
much you're trying to check that tongue, eventually it's gonna come out your mouth too. It's
Yep.
gonna look like, oh, okay, I didn't even see that. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
that now I see. Now I see. Girl, you dropping some
Yeah.
bombs on tonight. So yeah, we do. It definitely needs to be a book of Proverbs devotional. And I would love to see that, dedicated to men because like I said, I have young sons of my own. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And so when you're trying to provide that counsel and that wisdom and that guidance, to have something that really would address men as well. I mean, that's phenomenal. I mean, because they do set the tone. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. Like everybody always says you can't raise a man, and that's true. Like I can't teach you how to be a man,
Hmm.
but I can teach you how to be a decent human
There you
and a
go.
decent person.
There you
And
go.
so along the way, no, I can't teach you how to be a man. I don't know anything about manhood.
Mhm.
I could get you through some hurdles of life though
Right.
that will generally build you so that when you grow into a man, you at least have skills to deal with what you need to deal with. And then for everything else, then there is grandpa, uncle, pastor, you know, big cousin, big homie, whoever to fill
Yeah.
in that man role to say, hey, this is what you do as a man. This is how you deal with that as a man. Your mother
Right.
said this is how you deal with it as a person. She got you started. This is what you need to know from the man side of it.
Yes.
And so I know that I can't turn them into men, but my job is not to turn them into men. My job is to nurture them into decent people.
There you go.
And their father, grandfather, uncle, whoever is, that's their job to turn them into men. That's
Right.
not me. I just support you along the way and be like, nope, we're not doing that.
There you go. I mean, because
Yeah.
takes a strong mother. It takes a village. It really
Mm-hmm.
does. It takes a community to be able to raise a child and be able to instill those godly principles and values,
Yes.
especially as we see these things waning in the day and age that we are currently living in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all the various challenges that we're facing. Let me ask you this question. Where do
Mm-hmm.
you draw inspiration from for your stories that manage to weave together the characters that you do? So, where do you draw inspiration when you're writing your book, when you're forming these things? Where does this come from?
Stuff that I have lived.
Mm.
Um, and because a lot of it is stuff that I asked about when I was younger, but
Mhm.
when you're younger, people just tell you, oh, they're just unequally yoked, but they don't tell you what that means.
Oh, girl.
Or they tell you that's none of your business, just pray for them. But what
Hmm.
they really should have told you was that's what an abusive relationship looks like. Stay
Mm.
away from it.
See?
Um, or that's what it looks like when somebody's manipulative. You don't want to
Mm.
deal with those type of people. And so
Mm.
because you see all of this stuff and you see it in the adults, but the adults back then, they did what they could with what they had. And
Right.
so the only thing they told you was, oh, just that's not your business. Just stay in
There
the
you
child's
go.
place.
There you
Well,
go.
now I'm 20 and I'm 21 and I'm still seeing this same stuff. So I'm not a child anymore. So now what's going on? And then the answer is, well, just pray for them. They just unequally yoked. Or stop talking about people. No, I'm not talking about people. I'm not talking about their situation. I don't want to know their business. I want to know why it is why is this going on with them? What happened that got them to that point? I don't want to know your business. I don't want to talk bad about you. I want to understand what this looks like and what it is. And so, people tell you meet people where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Been there, did that. Met them where they were.
Right.
Conversely, I should have also left them where they
True.
were. But they don't tell you that part. Meet people where they are and walk with them. Where are you going?
Right.
Where are we walking to? And do they necessarily have to go? And so because these are all the things that I went through and I didn't necessarily have answers, when I got to a point where it all just had to start coming out, I said there has to be other people that are going through this stuff. And I was watching Married at First Sight a couple years ago, and there was a young girl on the show, and she'd grown up in church. And mind you, she's probably 20 years younger than me. And she was going through the same type of stuff that I went through, because all she knew was I'm supposed to be the wife that prays for my husband, regardless of whatever foolishness he does. But at some point, there should have been a disconnect that says, no, you can pray for him, but from over there. Don't keep yourself immersed in that situation, because it's going to kill you. Like, it's detrimental to your well-being. And she stayed with it as long as she could. And, dynamics of TV and all of that stuff, she almost ended up back in this abusive marriage.
Wow.
Excuse me. And so at the point of watching this show, I was like, okay, I can't not write anymore, because here this girl is, she's 20 years younger than me, and she's still going through the same thing, which means the same stuff that I went through 20 years ago is still happening right now. And somebody has to start talking about it. There's not enough people talking about it.
I love that, because what you're generally saying is just that there are teaching moments, where we can have an opportunity to teach. And instead of talking about it and expounding on why this is important and why we should not do this, or, what this looks like, we do shun the subject altogether. You know what I'm saying? And we don't talk about a lot of different things that are uncomfortable to talk about, that people necessarily need us to address. And so I really like that. And that's why I really love the book, Be the Overcomer, because it really kind of had you look and not just read scripture just to read it, but read it to apply it, to understand it, to be able to take the time to be able to meditate. Because a lot of times you're just reading for the sake of saying, okay, I read it. You know what I mean? Check. Now let me go and hit my day. But there was no application. There was no time for this word of God to really register in my being and my soul, for me to be able to understand how this is applying to me right now in my day-to-day life, how I'm going to take this word and let this word permeate in everything that I do. You know what I'm saying? And so the acronyms for me, because I'm just a person that loves acronyms. Like, yes, you got acronyms in here. And yes, about me here. Yes. You know what I mean? Those things really kind of make those words kind of jump off pages and really make them become real for me. You know what I'm saying? Because not only am I getting an idea into your insight, but now I'm actually being able to apply that to myself in my own day-to-day life. So that's something that we want to be able to look for those teaching moments, those uncomfortable teaching moments, and allow the Spirit of God to allow us to teach and to minister to a person, instead of saying something that is so cliche. Like, hey, what goes on in mama's house stays in mama's house, or let's just pray for them, but we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to address anything or do anything that looks uncomfortable or that's not packaged and pretty. So I really love those points. Well, were you getting ready to say something? Because I don't want to.
No, it's funny to me, because every time somebody says we don't talk about that, all I now hear is that little Disney song. We don't talk about Bruno. But the reality is they should have talked about Bruno.
But
Bruno.
I mean, the reason why it was so catchy, and I think even to us as adults, because we understand that. We
Mm-hmm.
understand that in families there are things that we just don't talk about. And so I don't
Right.
care how old you are, whether you're a child or you're, well into your senior years, you can
Mm-hmm.
understand this whole premise. And when I was watching that story, I was like, man, this is just sad for Bruno. I'm like, wow. My heart was just going out for him, like the whole family. I mean, even the people in the city, like, we don't mess with Bruno. We don't talk about it.
Right.
But these are things that we need to talk about. Conversation. Sometimes those
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable places is right where ministry begins, where
Yep.
healing begins, when we talk about these things that we don't really want to talk about.
Yep. And that was the whole thing of, when I looked at, because for a minute I didn't even want to see that movie. And then I watched it and was like, okay, the whole movie is about a misappropriated gift, which is what generally ends up happening when you end up in certain life situations.
Mm-hmm.
It's a misappropriated gift. And so a lot of things that when I look back at how I ended up in the situation that led to being in an abusive relationship, it was a misappropriated gift. I'm a teacher. I have a mercy gift. I have discernment. Well, the discernment was turned off like the radio. It just wasn't playing, wasn't even stuff that I picked up. I was just like, it's probably just paranoia. Because I didn't know how to listen to it. I didn't know to listen to it. I just thought it was, people like, oh, you're just paranoid. You expect too much. It's this, that, it's the third. So I ignored stuff that I should have locked into. And then being a teacher, if you tell me you want to learn, then okay, I'm all for it.
Right.
So that's it. You say you want to learn. All right, let's go. This is what we got to do. This is what we do. That's how I ended up writing a workbook. Like that's where my mind goes. Everything is a lesson plan and a teachable moment. And I'm gonna ask you some questions. I'm gonna make you feel uncomfortable because that's how you learn stuff.
Right.
And so when you tell me that, but then you don't follow through on it, now I don't know what to do with that situation. I don't know how to act. And so my only recourse was to give you more information. Do more so you can learn more because eventually you'll pick it up.
Right.
And it took a while for it to set in that some people just really aren't interested in learning. They don't want to learn. They don't want to learn. They just want to do what they want to do, and that's them, and that's their plans for themselves. But they're not interested in learning anything. And when all of that stuff started to sink in, I said, okay, there's other people in the world who feel the same way. Oh, I can just teach you. I can show you. Everybody's like, oh, well, you have to show people how to treat you. Yeah, but at some point, if they're not getting it, you can walk away.
Yes.
Because that's a choice for them not to get it. If you've said, this is how I want to be treated, this is what I like, you've shown them, you've given them examples. After that, you don't need to stay there for that because they're just insisting on not doing it. And you don't need to be a part of that. And so, all those little things that you hear people say, I have they're my daughters. They're my bonus babies. But they're my daughters. And so I listen to them and there's certain stuff that they would say and I'm like, nope, you don't do that. We're not doing that. We're not doing this. These are not the conversations we're going to have. If this is what happens to you, go the other way. And the hardest part of that was going through my situation, knowing that they were watching. And I had to go back and tell them, okay, look, I did all of that, but you don't. Don't do any of it. If you see it, walk away from it.
Right.
I stayed to protect them to a degree, not realizing that it was doing them more harm than good. To see all of that. And so having come out of it, when I got out of it, they understood and they were like, well, we were wondering what took you so long. Because we didn't know. Like, we didn't know what was going on. We didn't know how you kept going, but we knew you were tired.
Wow.
And so, it was hard enough to do, but knowing that they understood the why and that they were old enough to now see it and understand that those are not things that they should ever have to go through in life and why I became so adamant about them not doing certain things, because then they got it and they understood. So, it all comes back around. But
So you're the constant teacher. So even while you're going through something, you're still teaching someone something.
mm-hmm,
So
all the time.
that's I could just see that. I mean, that's the irony in it of being a constant educator. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
In the moment, you're looking for someone to learn a lesson and to be able to convey a powerful message, and you want to make sure that they get it. So I think that that's a very selfless response and just thought process. Now, let me ask you this:
Mm-hmm.
what book was the first book that you've ever like fell in love with? If you had to think back, what is the first book that you fell in love? Like, oh, I read this. Like, reading is just so different now that I've read this book.
The first book I ever fell in love with, it's a Richard Wright book.
Okay.
Or was it The Invisible Man? It was between Black Boy and The Invisible Man.
Oh, okay.
One of those two. I read it for fun because I just
Mhm.
picked it up out the library. But then right after I read it that summer, I had to turn around and read it for school.
Mm.
And we had to do like a character paper about the actual main character and about like why he felt invisible and he wasn't seen and all of this stuff. And the same thing for like Black Boy and Native Son and all of those books. They were just like mind opening to me because I didn't see it as just the character on the page. I'm like, no, these are people that I know in real life
Mm.
and stuff that they went through. And so they're probably still some of my favorites. And
Okay.
what's that other? Zora Neale Hurston.
Oh, okay.
Their Eyes Were Watching God.
Oh. Oh.
Every time I read it, I feel like I'm sitting on the porch in Florida watching this whole story go by,
I like
broken
it.
English and all. Like
Yes.
I absolutely love any of her books, really, but
Mhm.
especially that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's definitely a classic. I'm glad that
Mm-hmm.
so. So do you find it hard to juggle your creative side versus your editor side? Do you have a moment where they're playing tug of war? Does your editorial skill and prowess stop you from being able to just create, or does your creative side just kind of take over your editorial side to allow you just to be able to do it, or are you able to juggle
Um,
both?
I think I've been able to juggle well,
Okay.
mostly because I never considered myself to actually be creative until somebody was like,
Mm.
"You sit down and you write books. Like that is creative." And I'm like,
Yes,
"Really?" I was just writing down what happened. Like, okay, if you say so,
it's
all right
definitely
then. It's
creative.
creative. Um, because in my quote unquote other life, I'm a mathematician. Everything
Mm.
is logic and
Okay.
computer problems and all of that stuff. So when I sit down to write like that, to me, I don't look at it as creative, but it is, because the creativity it takes to actually program a computer to do what's in your mind to do is a whole nother level of all of that. But I just never saw it that way. To me, it just made sense. And so even when I'm writing, like everybody's like, you shouldn't self edit. And I'm like, who writes and doesn't self edit? Like, how can you just look at all them red lines and be okay with that? I can't do that. And so,
So you don't send it. So you do the entire editorial process yourself. You don't send it to anybody else to look at.
I do. I did it all myself for this one, and then because I did Be the Overcomer on a short turnaround time, my mom used to edit all of my stuff like through college. That was my editor.
That's right.
And so when I wrote the book, I sent it to her
I know that's right.
and said, "Mommy, edit it." And she sent it back. It was like, "Here, this is what you need to fix." And then, we put it out in the world. Now, my next book that I'm writing will definitely go to an editor. Like, I'm not sending that one to my mom. Not that she wouldn't love it, but I want her to see it when it's all pretty and finished. I don't want her to see
No.
the rough side of it. But yeah, I still send it to an editor. But my goal, I feel like, I want to send it to the editor so that all they're looking for is stuff where maybe it's a hole, because I know what I want to say, but maybe I didn't convey it well.
Okay.
I don't want them to have to go through and fix grammar, spelling, commas, periods. Like, find the holes
Okay.
and help me with that part. But I don't want them to have to do a whole lot. Um, and that's generally, even with the chapters for like the anthologies, none of them really had to do a lot to anything. Um, that I ever got back. And the one that actually did, I didn't read the copy they sent me back because they sent it back without the editor marks in it. So I thought it was fine, and it was the way that I sent it, and didn't find out till after the book got published that they changed like 3 sentences that changed the whole dynamic of my story. Um, and so
Seriously? So there was no sign off?
she sent it, but it didn't have. Okay, so you know how you send it off to the
Right.
editor sends it back. There's
Mhm.
comments. You can tell
Right.
the red lines where they
Yes
make
or
like
no? You're
periods,
supposed to be
all of
able
that
to
stuff.
accept it or reject it.
None of that stuff was in it. They just sent it back and said, "Here, read through it." Well, it was right before Christmas.
Oh, okay.
Um, either no, was it? No, it wasn't Christmas. It was before Thanksgiving,
Okay.
and both my sons were home with COVID. So now I get this chapter, and they're like, "Here, read this," and so I'm reading through it, looking for editor marks,
You didn't
and didn't
see
see
any.
them. And so because I know what I wrote, when I got to the part that they actually changed, I looked at it and was like, maybe that is what I wrote, and just bypassed it and didn't think
Okay.
nothing of it.
Okay.
And so then when I got the actual book, excuse me, I'm reading, and I read the first chapter of it, and I'm like, man, who did she pay to edit this book?
Hmm.
Because it had all kinds of like mistakes and other stuff in it. And I'm like, now I know good and well that the lady that wrote it couldn't have written that poorly. Yes, she was a new writer, but this is extreme, like stuff that was
Hmm.
missing. So I read that chapter, and then something just said, read your own. And I started reading and said, wait a minute, this is not what I wrote.
Girl.
And they changed like 2 key sentences that made the whole thing not make any sense.
Oh no. I know that had to be incredibly frustrating.
It was very frustrating. And then I read through, like, I started skimming through the rest of the book and found out that the book itself
Mm-hmm.
was poorly edited. I don't know that it was poorly written, but it was definitely poorly edited.
Wow.
And so needless to say, that was my that was the last anthology that I thought I was going to do, because I was like, nope, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore because this is trash. I'm not doing this. And then the
Girl.
other ones popped up, and they weren't that same experience, but
Good.
um even still, I've decided that I'm only doing certain ones. Like, I really, for certain people, yes, I will write for your book. For anybody else, no, I'm not. I'm not. I'm
Yeah,
good.
I don't blame you. I mean, you have to be able to know what your brand is, what works for you. You know what I'm saying?
Mm,
What's going to identify with your speaking voice, your audience. You know what I'm saying? All those important things. And I mean, changing, some sentences that I write. I mean, you take those things to heart. You know what I mean? Because you're writing it
mm-hmm.
out in a certain way that you want to convey a message. And
Yep.
so, like I said, I get it. I get it, because if I'm looking at something, I'm expecting to see my words on here, not your words,
Mm-hmm.
my words on here. So, I mean, I definitely can understand and respect that. I mean, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
I get it. Just as a writer, I understand that. So I know that had to be incredibly challenging and frustrating for you. So, but I'm glad you were able to move
It
past it,
was.
and
Yeah.
still be able to find anthologies that you feel fit that dynamic and what you're looking for, and that
Mm-hmm.
hold to a certain standard. So I'm glad that you were able to be able to still participate,
Yeah.
in the world of anthologies, right? Now, let me ask this question. Do you believe that there's ever a point in life where it's too late for an aspiring writer to become successful in this industry? Like some people might feel like, well, if I didn't do it in my 20s, or if I didn't do it in my 30s, if I didn't do it in my 40s, if I didn't do it in my 50s, do you think that there's a cutoff time or limit for a person to be able to be successful in this field as a writer?
I don't think so. I think success is whatever you deem to be successful. And
Mm-hmm.
so for some people, success is the fact that you wrote the book, period.
Exactly.
And what I end up telling people, a lot of people, because they think, oh, you're a writer now, that means this, that, and the third. And I'm like, it don't mean none of that. It means that I write and people can read it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't start writing to become like J.K. Rowling rich. Now, if it happens and the Lord gonna give it to me, then by all means, thank you,
Hey.
sir. We gonna roll with it. But it wasn't one of them things I went into thinking, oh, I'm gonna write this chapter in this book and I'm gonna be a millionaire. Like, that's not how this works. And
Not
so
at all.
at all. And so what I always tell people, I'm like, you have to keep in mind why it is you're writing.
Yeah.
And if you are writing for the sole purpose of money, then don't do it, because you're gonna disappoint yourself
Yes.
and you're not gonna get the results that you want, and then you're gonna drive yourself crazy because you want these results and they're not happening. Versus if I'm writing to get a message out into the world because God gave me words that people need to read and people need to hear, then the money will come when it comes,
Right.
because he's going to send it. The book's going to get where it needs to go to the people who need to read it. And I'm going to get a check. And it's all fine. It'll all work itself out. But had I went into it looking for a paycheck, I probably wouldn't keep doing it. Because it's just like teaching. You don't go into teaching because you want to check. It's
Right.
the
It's a
whole wrong
passion.
job.
Yes.
It's the whole wrong job for that to happen. And even when I left, it was still like money was not the reason for me leaving education. It was the stress of teaching in a pandemic,
Mm.
and all of the foolishness that went with that. But never ever did I look at it for, oh, I'm gonna be rich being a teacher. It's not gonna happen. I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna be rich being a writer. I might be rich being an editor first.
Okay.
Realistically.
You better say that.
um, but it's not it's the thing that is my gift that makes room for me.
Yes.
And because it keeps making room, then things keep doing what they need to do and they go in the direction that they need to go. And I'm all for it. And even though, a lot of times people are like, you have to stop saying you're not in it for the money. But I'm not. I'm really
I think
not.
that's being honest though, just saying where you are,
Yeah. I
what
mean,
you're driving.
I'm not. Yes, money's great and yeah, I'm gonna take it, but that's not my sole
Hmm.
purpose of it. It's there are people in the world who may not ever set foot in the church,
There you go.
but they'll pick up my book
Mm.
and it may change the trajectory of their life. Even if they come to Jesus, that's great. If they at least read the book and know that he exists and he can do for them what he did for me, even if they never ever go to anybody's service and do whatever, it's the fact that they know that he's real and he's there for them too. And so if I've done that part, then that's what matters to me.
Mm.
I've put out what he wants in the world, and then the rest of it he'll take care of. I
Yes.
just need to give him the words. He does what he does with the rest of it.
I love that insight. I love that point. So let me ask you this. There are many writers who will never read anything that they have written. Like once they write it, it's like it's over. I'm on to the next thing. And once they finish with that, let me ask you, and then there are other writers who pick up their book and say, oh, yes, I could still read this. Where do you fall once you've completed a project? Can you go back into your work and read that again? Or is it like, you know what, I've delved too much into this. I can't pick this book up again.
I have in the past year, I've reread most of them.
Okay.
Um,
Was there something specific that prompted you to do that?
some of it was speaking,
Okay.
because you write all of these book chapters and people are like, hey, you could come speak for this conference. And I'm like, well, what am I going to talk about? And guys like, duh, you wrote books. Like, just pick one and make a speech. And I'm like, oh, yeah. So I go through and I read them. And then I read them and I forget that it's me that wrote it. And so I'm reading and I'm like, man, this is really good. Who wrote this? And then it dawns on me, oh, no, I did this. Like,
Okay.
this is me. So I don't pick it back up right away. I think the very first book I did, like as soon as I got it home in the mail, I was like, "Oh, look, where's my stuff? Where's my stuff?" And then all the ones after that, I kind of waited a while and went back and read it. But I've read them all.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that's good. That at some point, even if it wasn't right away, you still at some point came back and began rereading it. Okay, I like it. I like it. I like it. Let me ask you this question. How about rejection? Every writer at some point in stage of their career or their life as a author is going to deal with rejection. What's your advice for someone who's wanting to begin their writing journey, but they're scared of the rejection? What would be some counsel that you could give to them about, how you deal with rejection or how they could typically deal with rejection?
Do it anyway. It'll be for who is for, and who is not are not your people. And everybody is not are not, whichever. I can't do subject verb agreement right now, but everybody ain't your people.
Okay.
Just everybody's not your people. And so you can't write a book thinking it's going to reach everybody, because it's available to everybody. Yes, free country, free world, spend your money, get a book. It's available to everybody, but it's only going to sit with the people that it's supposed to sit with. And a lot of times what we see as rejection is a matter of timing. Just because you write it and Amazon lets you publish it yourself doesn't mean that it was supposed to be in the world right now. Or it can be there, but maybe now is not the time for you to talk about it. So Be the Overcomer has been available since 2020. The beginning of 2021. People know about it, but I didn't talk about it a lot until this past year.
Okay.
And so people knew it was available. Some people bought it. And then I just didn't say anything else about it. One, because I didn't get it copywritten, and I was like, man, if somebody steals my stuff, it's going to be a whole problem. So I wouldn't say anything until after I got that piece of paper back from the government that was like, hey, your book's your book. So that cleared that up. Excuse me.
Okay.
Outside of that, for the people that needed it when they needed it, it was there. For people that I came across randomly and they said, hey, I'm dealing with depression, are there any tools or resources for somebody to read? Have you read any good books? And I can say, well, I wrote one.
Oh, nice.
So here you go. And they were like, well, are you promoting yourself? No, I'm not. But you asked for a book, and I know this one's good because I lived it. Like,
oh wow.
And so I would only talk about it in bits and pieces. Until this year, when I was like, stop reinventing the wheel and talk about the stuff you have. And all of this stuff comes up. So, with May being Mental Health Awareness Month, and the book is actually about mental health.
Right.
It's no time like the president to be like, hey, look, I had depression and Jesus and a therapist. Like, these three things all existed at the same time. And that's just what I had to do and how I dealt with it. So.
I love it. And I especially love the transparency. You know what I mean? Because there are so many times that we're all going through various things in life, and most of the time we're wearing masks. And we don't want people to see what it really looks like. When someone's asking, well, how do you feel today? which mask do I need? Put this
Right.
mask on.
Right.
Everything's fine. I feel
Right.
great. I was so certain that you asked. Everything. When really inside we want to say, everything's crappy today. I hate it. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And I think a lot of times we miss help because we're unwilling to say. And I think it's because we view that as strength by putting on this
Mm-hmm.
mask. Wait a minute, how you at? Okay, put on this fake mask. Okay, everything's fine, and I feel great.
Right.
But it takes so much more strength not to pick up the mask and just have a moment to be real and transparent. Everything's not okay. And it's okay to
Mm-hmm.
know that I can be depressed. I can have Jesus and a therapist all in one wop and still everything be okay with that picture. You know what I mean? And
Right.
so I think that's so profound and so poetic, and it's just so therapeutic. You know what I mean? Because
Mm-hmm.
again, it's talking about those things, especially we as Christians and women in particular don't like to talk about. I know men don't like to talk about it, but women don't talk about what's going on in their mental health.
Mm-mm.
We don't. We want to make it seem like
Nope.
we're the ideal woman and we have it all together. Everything is in place as it quote unquote should be,
Right.
right? When everything is not okay and it's not where it should be. And so I think that that's amazing that the book covers these types of dynamics. One more question before we go into a couple of
Mm-hmm.
what I'm going to call um, hot fire questions or these random fire questions. First, because you are both an author and a editor, how if there's someone who wants to begin their writer's journey and they need an editor, first of all, what are some tips that people should look for in a good editor in general, and then more specifically, how can they find you? Um, so that you can help them along their way as they try to be able to begin their book so that they can have
Mm-hmm.
a polished product at the end.
So, one of the things to look for, ask for samples
Mm.
so that you can see a sample of their work. A lot of one of the things that I'm going to start doing, and I got the idea from a friend who's also an editor, is that she schedules, excuse me, she schedules your consultation, and then as a part of your consultation, she edits like 3 pages of your work,
Mm.
and she sends it back to you so that you can see if you like the edits, if you understand, if this is what you're looking for. But find an editor, number one, that has samples. Number two, that has some type of credibility. So I can show you books that
Mm.
I've edited. I can point you to where they are. Some of them are available for free on Kindle. Like you can flip through and see the end product of what I've done. Um, and again, I'm very open about it. I will tell you straight up, I am a teacher. So because I started writing and editing at a time when you had to be able to explain yourself well, teaching mathematics, everything I look at has to be well explained. I'm not going to change your voice. I'm going to show you how to use it to say what you want to say. And a lot of people don't look at that part. They just think it's commas, periods, and they look for proofreaders. But a good editor doesn't just proofread. They tell you this doesn't make any sense.
Mhm.
Your story needs development, and that's a whole different level of editing in and of itself, to develop a story from start to finish. Um, or be able to pick out those things, because some editors don't do it. They just go line by line, and if that's what you want, that's fine. But if you know that's not what you need, be very clear and upfront about what you're expecting the editor to do, and that'll help you hire a good one. Um, and then to
Oh, I
find me,
love that because that's really important because sometimes you can go to an editor and they can just really take your voice. It doesn't sound like you anymore. Now it sounds like them and you're just
mm-hmm,
along for the ride. So having someone who's able to be able to, first of all, give you critiques and still be able to maintain the authenticity of your voice
mm-hmm,
is important because your voice is going to provide impact. And so I
yep.
think that that's really dynamic. I'm just glad that you pointed that out. And then how can people connect with you to be able to
You
provide that
can
evidence?
find me on Facebook, either Sakia Gaither Stuckey or Sakia the Teacher, which is the page that started from my blog. But if you find it, you'll find me. My website is tsgsgroup.com. And so from that website, you can actually get to the blog. You can get to the site for the Ready Write Her, where you can discuss your editing needs, and you can also excuse me, getting over a
Sorry
cold.
about that. I know
You can also get to Redefining You, which is the other blog that I started. So Takia the Teacher is all education. The Ready Write Her is the editor and the author. And Redefining You is the blog about life. And life. Life in Jesus is just the best way to put it.
Yes.
All things in between. And so all of that is there and available, and it has all the points of contact and everything else on there.
I love it. Okay, so let's do some rapid fire questions. But before we go, we're going to also have you just provide that information one last time, both for the editing and both how people can contact with you and connect with you to get the books. So, are you ready, Takia?
Ready.
Okay, so are you a soul food girl or are you an Italian food girl? Which one?
Soul food.
Soul food? Okay. So for you, is it BB Winans or CC Winans?
CC.
CC, really? Okay. I wasn't expecting CC. Okay, all right. Okay, so what about this? Are you a Netflix and chill, or are you out on the town?
I am Netflix and chill.
Netflix, I could see that. I could see Netflix and chill. I could definitely see the Netflix and chill. Okay, so what are you? Are you vacations with the kids or a night out with the girls?
Both.
Both. Okay, depending on the situation.
Yeah.
Okay. I got two more rapid fire questions, and they are, let's see. So, writer or author or editor? If you had to pick a hat, which hat would it be?
Editor.
Editor, really? That's where you're most passionate at, is editing?
I'm passionate with both. I figure author will always find a way. So realistically, I can't pick, but editing pays bills. Authoring hasn't gotten that far yet. And so
there goes that logic.
Yeah.
There goes that logic.
Yep.
So I can see that. That makes sense. Okay, and so let's see. Last question for last question is on our little rapid fire. Are you an Earth, Wind, and Fire type of girl, or are you an OJ's type of girl?
Neither. The Gap Band.
Yeah! Girl, you killed it. Whole thing down, girl. I'm telling you. This is my type of woman right here. And y'all heard it first on Her Purpose on Trivia's Inspirational Radio. I'm telling you. Y'all heard it. If you didn't hear it nowhere else, you heard it here first. So one more time, I need you to, well, first of all, again, Takia, let me thank you for being just gracing us with your presence, because you are so extremely busy, all the various hats that you are juggling simultaneously. I just want to thank you for taking time to be able to stop in and chat with us on Her Purpose, to give us a little insights about being a writer and editor and your phenomenal book, Be the Overcomer, and books that are coming down the pike this year that people have to check out, that they heard on here first, that they have to definitely be able to make sure they check out, and just how to connect with you. So thank you again. So if you can tell people again your name and your books, the name of your books, and where they can connect with you first. Let's try that one first.
So I am Takia Gaither Stuckey. You can find me on Facebook, same name, or Takia the Teacher, which is my business page. My website is tsgsgroup.com. It has all the things: the teacher, the author, the editor, the blogger, all in one spot. And thank you, Chanelle, for having me here. Everybody go out and Be the Overcomer. If you know someone who's struggling with depression, buy it and give it to them as a gift. It will bless their life. It's made for people who don't want to admit that they're going through what they're going through, and they just need a quiet minute between them and God, and that's it.
Well, hold on. I'm gonna also say this will also be good for Bible study groups. If you have a Bible
Mm-hmm.
study group who's trying to really delve into scripture, because sometimes again we don't like to talk about those things that we don't like to talk about, and it would be a good place to be able to begin those discussions at a Bible study group. If you have a book club who's looking for a good book, this would also be a fantastic read for them as well. They have some activities that you guys can be able to utilize, and so definitely pick up the book Be the Overcomer. And I got my book at home. I do. And so also, if you can tell people how they can connect with you to be able to begin their writing journey, they're looking for an editor. Maybe they're starting the process of writing, or they've already written and they're completed and now they need someone to edit. How can they reach you?
You can reach me at takia@tsgsgroup.com and just send me an email and let me know what it is you want to do. If you're looking to start writing and you want coaching, if you're looking for an editor, all the things, just let me know and we'll proceed from there.
All right, guys. Well, we want to thank you, beautiful people, for tuning in and for showing up and showing out. Like I said, you heard it here first, Miss Takia Gaither Stuckey. Go out and get that book, Be the Overcomer. And don't forget, once you're done reading that book, give her a review. Authors really need reviews. Reviews are good for other readers, people who are coming behind you who are thinking, like, is this a book for me? Your review will be able to help another reader find a book that's good for them. So make certain that you give her a good review on Amazon. And that's all we have for today. So we thank everybody for coming out and tuning in. And we thank the beautiful Takia Gaither Stuckey for making time for us on Her Purpose on Trivia's Inspirational Radio. Bye, everybody.